Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss movie news and review a film, either current or classic. Although we haven't done many classic films lately, so maybe we need to fix that. But going into blockbuster summer season, I don't know where we're going to find a hole to plug that with, but we'll see. If I look a little funky, it's unfortunately because Jim's camera slash computer slash podcasting rig is down for the count right now, so we are podcasting together. So Jim is right here with me at my side. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love you, Jim. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here right next to Brad, which is nice in one way, but it's going to be a kind of a dance of coordination to get the show done. But yeah, I'm here, so thank you.
All right, and Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey guys, I'm neither dancing nor coordinated, so it's probably good that I'm in a different room.
Awesome. Well, we are happy to be here and reviewing the new X-Men film. Well, are we happy to be reviewing that film? I guess we'll find out. But we'll be reviewing X-Men Days of Apocalypse Class Last Stand thing.
Too many words.
I don't know.
It's Apocalypse.
Whatever the new X-Men movie is. Age of Apocalypse. I'm just kidding. But we'll also be dishing up a little bit of movie news. So hello to all of you who are joining us live. We see one of you hanging out with us already. Give us a comment in the Q&A section or in the comments. Let us know what you thought of X-Men Age of Apocalypse. If your comments are workplace appropriate, we'll be happy to read them on air. But guys, big show. Lots to talk about. How about some movie news? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah,
let's go.
All right. That said, then here we go. Some movie news. All right. So, Will, what has got your interest this week?
You know, I had a movie news item. It was all lined up, ready to go. And about 6 hours ago, a new announcement was made, and it immediately jumped to the top of my list. I'm excited to talk about this. So there's this dude named Lin-Manuel Miranda. You may not recognize the name right away, but you may recognize him as the creator of the Broadway musical Hamilton. I think even if you're not really into musicals, you've probably heard about Hamilton. You've heard jokes about, like, oh my God, it's so hard to get tickets.
It's
a
a
hot
smash.
It is a smash hit. Well, before Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda had another very, very popular musical. I mean, not Hamilton big, but did quite well for itself, called In the Heights. And around 2011, Universal was kind of thinking about, oh, we're going to turn it into a film. No, we're not. It kind of got stuck in that little phase. Well, we found out today, 6 hours before we started recording, that the Weinstein Company is developing a film adaptation of In the Heights. This is super exciting for me. I enjoy musicals. I enjoyed this one. I enjoy Lin-Manuel Miranda's success, and I hope that this it does well, and then it turns into maybe a Hamilton film adaptation as well. So really cool news for anyone that loves musicals and loves musical adaptations.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that they'll eventually go after, a Hamilton film adaptation. If they haven't, somebody's probably snagged up the rights already for that, I'm sure. But it's good to hear that In the Heights is going to get some love. We saw that, probably 4 years ago now when it came through, and I really enjoyed it. The music is a little bit kind of out of my sweet spot for music, but I'd definitely be interested in seeing what they do with this adaptation. I mean, film adaptations of musicals have not been the greatest, but haven't always turned out the greatest. So we'll have to see how this goes. But yeah, this is pretty exciting news.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I really liked In the Heights. I thought that the music was great. It's a little out of my normal wheelhouse, but I did appreciate it quite a bit. It was one of those surprising musicals kind of grabbed me, and I really enjoyed. So I'm pumped to see there's potentially a movie.
was really interesting is, and I didn't even know this, I was reading this article and at the bottom it says, oh, and also this isn't new news, this is old news, but it was new news to me. Lin-Manuel Miranda, he's the guy who wrote all these. He's also the star of these. He kind of writes himself into the lead roles. He's been cast in the Mary Poppins sequel in 2018. He's playing the role of Jack in Mary Poppins against, who's he up against? Emily Blunt. So good on him for being one of the two leads of the new Mary Poppins movie.
Yeah.
That I didn't even know was being made.
Yeah, there we go with those live action, those Disney live actions again.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Jim?
So let me see. Something caught my eye today, and it was some news of Star Wars Rogue One, which we saw the trailer for a little while ago, and we all got pumped to see it. Apparently, Disney saw the product as it stands now and ordered a bunch of reshoots. I guess there's going to be about 4 weeks worth of reshoots on the film. And that's got the whole film blogosphere going crazy. Like, oh my God, this might not mean good things. I mean, we've seen it before where announced reshoots or rewrites or whatever have in the past sometimes come back to haunt or to sting a movie when it's released. A lot of times I think critics kind of jump on the fact that a movie had rewrites or reshoots when they see the final product, and they kind of use that as an excuse to kind of poke at the movie a little bit. So it's unclear whether this is really a bad thing, that Disney saw it and said, oh my God, we got to change all this stuff, it's terrible, or it's just a normal, reshoots are a normal part of the movie making process. So it's hard to know yet whether these are just normal reshoots or there's some problems with the movie and they had to do the reshoots. Now, the movie opens in December is it December this year when it opens?
Yes.
I think it's so, yeah.
Yeah, it's December this year, and they're going to be doing the reshoots in July. So, man, that's a tough scramble, I think, to get a movie finished from, shooting in July to on the screen and distributed and, special effects and audio and everything else done in like 5 months. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think of this news about reshoots? One of the things I saw online was, people were starting to wrangle on Gareth Edwards, the director, like, oh my God, I hated Godzilla. It's no wonder they're already starting with the, oh my God, there's no wonder there's problems on this movie. Anyway, I don't get too excited about it until we either see the movie or they decide to move the date of the movie, which in this case, I don't think they would do. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, for me, it's totally a wait and see type thing. Reshoots are just that, reshoots. They see something that they need to fix before it hits the screen, right? And so this used to happen all of the time beforehand. We just now have film press, we have blogs, we have things like this that make it more transparent. So if they use that opportunity to shore up any mistakes before it hits the screen, well, that's part of the internal quality assurance process. That's what a film company, especially one like Disney, which has big plans for this franchise, that's something that they're supposed to do. That said, we have seen several times where reshoots have been kind of a sign of a lack of confidence, either in the filmmaker or in the product or something like that. And usually that shakiness, well, not usually, but sometimes that shakiness isn't going to go away no matter how many reshoots you do. There's something that's disconnected or something that's not working. So I don't know. It could really go either way. I want it to be good. I want this to be a fantastic movie that has us as excited as we were following Force Awakens. So I guess we'll just have to see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, unfortunately, reshoots can sometimes get a bit of a bad rap. Will, I like one of the things you were saying about, reshoots being part of the filmmaking process, and they have been for a long time. It's just now, we're reading tweets about it instead of maybe an article in a magazine 3 months after the movie came out about the movie making process. So I think the movie going audience sometimes now in this sort of knee jerk in the moment tweet reaction we tend to go a little bit crazy when we get this kind of news. And it's unfortunate because it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I don't know, Darth Vader is coming down the hallway, like, ready to choke you out. You know what I mean? Or maybe it does mean that. And I'd be all about that if fan reaction to potentially having Darth Vader in this movie was so great that Disney's like, holy fuck, we got to make some changes because this is what they want. So we'll see. I loved what they did with The Force Awakens. I have faith in Disney at this point. So if they think reshoots are necessary, either because it makes the movie stronger or there was something they wanted to kind of beef up, I'm good with that. No problems here on my end.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is that, like I said, in I've seen it happen before where a movie comes out and even if it was generally liked, there'll be people that will pick apart the movie and say, "Oh my God, those no wonder why they had to do reshoots. These scenes were terrible." Blah 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 blah. I just hope that it doesn't prejudge the movie. It won't for me. This is news because it was reported on a website that I read, but I know it's part of the process, and I'm just again looking forward to another good Star Wars movie.
Definitely. All right. Awesome. So let's see. I guess I'm next up. Boy, this is really annoying trying to move all this shit around while we're podcasting, but it's what we do.
I love the little like as the mic is switching, like that slight pause. I just know like Jim later on is going to be like, edit this, edit that, edit that. Hey, keeping Jim on his toes.
Easy to fix.
Thank goodness we have a program that automatically takes some of that silence out as we like reset up every time.
Jim does all of that by hand, and he's a fucking god for doing so. And I'll hear nothing else.
Thanks, Will.
So for me this week, we got some news that Jesse Eisenberg is coming back as Lex Luthor in Justice League Part 1. And I'll be honest, I'm not excited by this news. I was expecting it, given sort of the plot thread from Batman versus Superman. Spoilers for Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. You've been warned. Lex Luthor has these like visions of is it Apocalypse? No, it's Darkseid. Why do I always get them confused? It's like they're versions of the same character from two different comic companies. I don't know.
That never happens.
No.
Generic villain X,
right? But he has all these generic villain X flashes of Darkseid and his legions may be coming. So I kind of assumed that Lex Luthor was going to be like the gateway drug to Earth. We kind of saw Mother Box, I think, in one of the YouTube videos that Diana, Princess of Themyscira, is watching. But I was kind of hoping that maybe if he did come back, it was just going to be something quick, something short. But I guess he's maybe getting a meaty role in this film. And that makes me cringe because I really did not enjoy Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor in that movie, unfortunately. Jim, I know you feel differently. You kind of liked his quirky, neurotic meth head thing. But for me, Lex Luthor is cold and calculating and 8 steps ahead of Superman, and he's a mature sort of equal. And I just felt like, I don't even know where else to go from there. I could just re-say the same things 8 times over. But I don't know. Jim, you're probably excited, I assume?
I can't say I'm excited. I didn't mind Jesse Eisenberg as much as some people did in the movie Batman v Superman. I thought he was fine. I mean, he really didn't do much different than like Heath Ledger did as in the Dark Knight movies, right? I mean, he had the same thing. It was like that crazy manic, nutty villain dude who.
But that's the Joker. He's a completely different villain. That is the Joker's character. Right.
But I mean, he's still a villain to me. Like again, I don't necessarily bring in the pre-existing ideas of what each villain is because I don't read the comics. The movie sets up a villain for me, and I either buy into it or I don't. And I understand where comic readers are coming from because it doesn't fit their vision of what Lex Luthor is. But again, I don't know how big his role is going to be in in the new movie, the Justice League movie. Are they going to raise this freaking Dark Lord? What's his name? Darkseid. And maybe he's the main villain, or he or she or whatever is the main villain. I don't know. Maybe Lex Luthor summons him from his jail cell. Spoilers for Batman v Superman, but who knows? I don't know. It doesn't get me excited one way or the other, but I don't hate the idea.
Well, what about you? You're our resident comic nerd. What's your feeling here?
I'm actually going to look at this from outside of comic fandom. I'm looking at it just as someone who did not enjoy the movie. I did not enjoy Batman vs. Superman all that much. And one of the things I disliked the most was Jesse Eisenberg's performance. And I went on record several times beforehand thinking, like, let's give this guy a chance. Let's see what it looks like. He could do a really good job. I ate a lot of crow on that because he turned in what I thought to be a really bad performance. Not just because Lex Luthor is supposed to be one way in the comics, but Lex Luthor was supposed to be one way within that film, and he didn't live up to that. Like, this guy is supposed to be in charge of this multinational, like, billion-dollar company, and he came across just like this little sniveling, incompetent, incapable character who just happened to have this magic plan. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. If you're going to do the stereotypical, like, crazy eye look, be a crazy eye character. Be the Joker, who, in that movie we kept seeing in The Dark Knight, like, the Joker, like, losing track of himself and just going off the deep end. I don't care about, taking the comic books aside, I just want the character to make sense within the film universe. I don't think Eisenberg pulled that off for the character he was supposed to play. And I was hoping that maybe, the filmmakers would have said, hey, gee, this movie did not do as well critically or with fan reactions as we would have liked it to. Let's use this as an opportunity to fix it going forward. One of the things that didn't work was Eisenberg, so let's reorient. I feel like DC, their movies are just film after film, just like they don't get it. Like, they don't have their finger on the pulse of anything. They've got a book somewhere where they've charted out all of these movies, and one of them comes out, and instead of adjusting and kind of weaving and flowing, instead of doing reshoots because their film comes out in December and they realize they need to do something different, they're just staying the path with these Justice League movies. And that's a problem for me. I don't care for this news, and it makes me want to see the next movie all the less. So, man.
So here's a potential thought that just hit me. So Jeff Johns is now the head, like, DC film guy now, right? He's sort of overseeing, like, all the movies. I think I read that.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And he's been one of the bigwig folks at DC for a while now, and I love a lot of the comic stuff that he's done. He's one of the forces behind this whole DC Rebirth thing right now that's going on, which, by the way, I read the first 80-page issue of and fucking loved it. Having read a lot of the New 52 and really hated a lot of the New 52 because a lot of the things that they threw away of the characters, legacies, and relationships. I don't know. I'm kind of excited that maybe he's going to come in to Justice League and do something different, do something awesome. It's not too late for him to influence this movie. So maybe this whole Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor thing, maybe it could be good. Maybe they're going to retool the character a little bit. Maybe his, like, mental contact with Darkseid is going to push him, over the edge into becoming the Lex Luthor that he is in the comic books. I don't know. It makes me interested to see what's going to happen. But I don't know. I'm still kind of wary.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, you want to kind of come up with, like, we want to like movies. We want to be excited for these, and we want to kind of come up with justifications for, like, why these things could turn out to be good decisions. And Jeff Johns is a good decision for DC. Like, having a singular creative voice kind of driving things forward is a really good idea. But damn, this Eisenberg stuff, like, they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to radically change the character for him to make sense in whatever they do with him. And I guess if they find a way to do that, more power to them. But I don't know. I wasn't super happy when I saw this news break.
You weren't super happy?
I felt pretty bat about it.
Nice.
No, it wasn't. That was bad. Don't laugh. That was awful. Not bad.
It could be a really small part. We don't know what it's going to hold. Maybe it's just a flash of that character, and we don't have to see much. But again, like I'm with you guys. I want to see a good movie. However they make that happen is fine with me.
Indeed. Well, guys, we have a movie to discuss. How do we feel about getting into it?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're going to say this up front. We are going to be reviewing X-Men Age of Apocalypse. What?
I think we're going to be reviewing X-Men Apocalypse.
Just Apocalypse.
Whatever. Whatever the fuck it's called. X-Men. I'm so used to multi-word titles now that I'm just kind of like...
Yeah.
And Age of Apocalypse is one of the most popular comic crossovers starring that character.
Yeah,
So
I guess they're blending in my brain. Anyway, X-Men Apocalypse. Thank you for correcting me. We're going to be reviewing. So we're just going to say up front that we're going to do this spoiler-free for probably the first, 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we go into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you're on the fence and you want our opinion as to whether we think you should see it, we're happy to give it to you. But when we do give you that spoiler warning, feel free to step away as needed and come back a bit later. In any event, here we go, our discussion of X-Men Apocalypse. All right, so Jim, why don't you give us a little bit of the setup on this one and whether you think people should see it in theaters?
Sure. So what we have as we said off the top is X-Men Apocalypse. I think this is like the 6th X-Men movie. I am not an expert. Again, I am not a comic book reader, but I have seen all the movies. I just haven't counted them all up. I think this is the 6th. This one's also directed by Bryan Singer, who directed the first one, and then I think he is maybe skipped a couple of them in between somewhere and is back for the last 2 or 3. So this movie centers around the emergence of what I guess is the world's first mutant named Apocalypse, and the X-Men have to unite to handle this villain and his plan for world extinction, world dominance, whatever. I mean, you just fill in the blank and you have your villain motivation there. So we've got the cast coming back. I mentioned, I didn't mention any of the cast. I mentioned Bryan Singer as the one of the writers and the director. We've got James McAvoy coming back as Professor Charles Xavier. Michael Fassbender's back again as Magneto. Jennifer Lawrence is back as Raven Mystique. Nicholas Hoult is back as the Beast. And then we start getting into, there's some new faces in this one, and we'll talk about some of that because I'm not sure I can keep all the characters and actors straight of all the X-Men. But so as far as my thoughts on this movie, and we should talk about our movie-going experience a little bit later. I'll let you dive into that one. Yeah, I didn't really care for this movie all that much. There were moments in this movie that I thought were okay, but as a whole, I thought this movie was just rather messy. Didn't have much in terms of stakes or emotional, an emotional grab for me. There was long stretches of action where I didn't know what the resolution was going to be. Maybe I knew the resolution. Obviously, it's a superhero movie. The superheroes usually win. But it just didn't do much for me. And we'll talk about some of the reasons for that in spoilers. But yeah, I mean, it had we'll talk about the problems with the villain. We'll talk about the problems with a lot of the character motivations. But I just can't recommend this. And look, I know that comic book fans are going to go see this movie. There are people that are fans of the X-Men that are going to see this movie no matter what. And a lot of them are going to love it. And I can tell by my Twitter feed and my Facebook that a lot of you guys love this movie. And, great on you. But as far as being and maybe it's a good X-Men movie. I don't know. We'll talk about that. But as far as being a good movie that held me, a non-comic book reader, this one just didn't do it.
The Emperor is not as forgiving as I am. It's a terrible Darth Vader impression, but so for me, I guess I look a little more kindly on this movie. Let me just say, we saw this up in Pine Top, Arizona. We went up camping with, well, not camping. We stayed in a cabin with a bunch of bears this weekend out in the woods hiking. There was a movie theater about 20 minutes away, so we got to go see this together as a group. And it was definitely a fun experience. A little bit of a weird one, though. I mean, the movie was like $6, which is great. But like the 3D glasses, oh my gosh, like the lenses were like this big, and they're so
oh my god,
dirty and gross and water spotted that they give you little packets of like lens cleaner cloths with each pair of glasses.
Yeah. They handed me this packet. I was like, what is this? A wet nap? Oh no, it's a lens cleaner.
It's for your glasses, man. They're to clean your glasses, bro.
Couldn't you have had someone do this? Yeah, but no.
No,
Right.
What they do is I think they put the glasses in like on this rack and they put them through this washer and they rinse them down with hot water or whatever. But they end up with water spots on them. It's smudged.
Yeah.
And it's not great. And the glasses themselves, like Brad said, the lenses were so small. And the other issue was, I think
for listeners, you're holding up something about the size of like a quarter. Like,
yeah,
slightly
like
bigger, right?
Maybe a quarter and a half.
Yeah, well, yeah. Kind of bad. The other issue is I think this theater had a problem with their projection. Typically during 3D presentations, the movie projection is brighter than normal to compensate for the loss of intensity or light density that you get through the glasses, because they do cut down on some of the light that reaches your eyes. So what they do to compensate for it is they make the actual projection brighter. And I don't think they did this, because as soon as we put the 3D glasses on, you know how they have that green panel that comes across like the following preview is approved.
Yeah.
Audience is it's white on a green background. The background looked like so dark green that it looked almost black. Yeah, it was really, really bad. And I think that might have, influenced my overall experience for the movie a little bit, because from the get-go I wasn't really very, 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 very happy and in a receptive mood for the movie. But yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I'm here. So yeah, it wasn't a great movie going experience, unfortunately, at the theater, but we went with a fun group of guys, and I don't know. I enjoyed the movie more than Jim did, I guess. To me, I mean, I've been watching the X-Men movies since whenever the first one came out, and unfortunately, the second and third movies were not great. Some of the Wolverine movies were not great. I did like X-Men First Class, though, and I did like Days of Future Past. It had its problems, but both were enjoyable films for me. So going into this one, I don't know. I guess I was kind of thinking it was probably going to be just your run-of-the-mill X-Men movie. I was a little worried, though, about Oscar Isaac as Ivan Ooze from Power Rangers, the movie. And I don't want to get too much into anything until we get into spoilers, but I'll just say I felt Oscar Isaac was like completely wasted. Whether he was wasted in the costume to do this movie is another question. But I think as an actor, he was totally wasted. I did enjoy seeing James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender back as Xavier and Magneto. Although, oh my God, I would love for them to have conversations that are different than conversations we've had in like every other movie. I'm really hoping that friendship goes somewhere. We'll talk more about certain elements of that, but J-Law, again, I felt was kind of wasted here. I almost feel like we should just go into spoilers in a moment after you weigh in here, Will. But I don't know. I thought it was fun. I think anytime you've got like, oh my gosh, all these superheroes need to unite to defeat this one supervillain guy, there's definitely a recipe for fun to be had. The danger, though, is that if you have too many people, if you have too many superheroes, then none of them really get a chance to sort of like grow and change and shine, and you get emotionally attached to them. It just becomes sort of a visual fest instead of like an emotional feast. And unfortunately, I think that happens here. We've got all these X-Men. We've got, we have Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen and all these heroes that are like duking it out. And it's just kind of like, I saw Civil War and Batman v Superman this year already. Like, do I really need to watch this again? So I don't know. I would say it's definitely worth going to see. It's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of the last couple of X-Men movies. I do kind of like how this one sort of sets the stage for more X-Men movies to come. Although Bryan Singer gave an interview and recently said, I guess he's taking a break away from the X-Men movies for a while. He wants to do something else. So I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. We'll see. So, I guess middle of the road for me. Go check it out. I think it's worth seeing. I don't know that you're going to think it's the best X-Men movie ever, but I will say it was better than X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Is that high praise? I don't know.
I've stubbed my toe and it was better than the third X-Men movie. So that's a hard comparison to make. But yeah, it was definitely better than X3.
Will, what do you think about this movie?
I'm very confused about this movie because this is a movie that has some things in it that are absolutely amazing. It has some things that I think they did remarkably well on screen. For every single one of those, there is a terrible or awful decision as well. So I'm still actually, I've been talking to people about this movie for a week now, and I don't know that I've fully formulated everything, but I'm going to try because we're on the air. First of all, the Oscar Isaac casting, you're absolutely correct. This was a very underutilized actor for a very forgettable villain, and he doesn't need to be a forgettable villain. They could have done so much with this character, and he fell so flat. And I think that's true of a few of the characters that appear in this movie, even the ones that are extraordinarily cast. Alexandra Shipp is cast as the new young Storm, and I think just in terms of performance, she was one of the best people that I saw on screen. She's one of the best casting decisions. I am so psyched about her, and she had next to nothing to do in this film, and that's a problem. You have a lot of these new cast members. Ty Sheridan does a really good job as Scott Summers Cyclops. Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones, Sansa. She grows into the role of Jean Grey. I wasn't feeling it at first, but I felt by the end, once she had something to actually do, I came around on her. The problem is there were long stretches of this movie where the cast members didn't have anything to do. You have a really okay opening act. You have an act 2 where the film goes into these weird turns. We'll talk about those in spoilers that completely derailed the movie and I think wasted any potential this film had. By the time we get to the action sequences at the end of the film, I enjoyed those quite a bit. I think I would have enjoyed them more if more time had been spent developing the characters that were involved in that brawl. And honestly, I can point to the very middle of the film. There's a very specific thing they should not have done. Had they not done that, I think I would have walked away saying, I liked this movie. Unfortunately, I didn't. It probably falls more in the... it's very middle of the pack as far as the X-Men movies are concerned. There have been better X-Men movies. There have been worse X-Men movies, and I'm counting the Wolverine movies in that as well. For me, it's better than Batman v Superman. It's worse than Civil War. This is a very meh superhero film. It is very middle of the pack. I want to say that X-Men Apocalypse is now going to be my new middle line. Like, everything below that is a bad movie. Everything above it is a good movie. And X-Men Apocalypse is the very central point that is neither good, neither bad, neither liquid nor solid. It just is right in the middle. Brad says it's X-Meh, and that's probably about right. Frustrating thing about this film is I think the good parts in this, if they had if they knew what they were doing and had let the good parts of this film really shine, I think we could have been talking about a really solid film here. There was enough good here that I think I get why people are excited about this film. But the bad just weighs it down so much, man. Like, that makes it frustrating for me, even more frustrating than worse movies. So yeah, middle of the road.
It's interesting you say you liked it better than Batman v Superman, because that's not the case for me. I enjoyed Batman v Superman. I was more interested in what happened in that movie, even though that movie definitely had its problems, as we talked about on the show. I didn't think it was nearly as just like pedestrian and boring as this movie was. Yeah, this movie had a lot more moving parts, but that didn't make it better. It actually made it worse, I think, because I think the movie lost focus. I think the movie wanted to focus on its villain, but I got to say, its villain was not very compelling to me. Really generic, just another villain with a bad makeup job, and I don't know, and a plan that was so generic, that I don't know. I just wasn't that interested in it. So I don't definitely liked. Civil War is the best so far this year for superhero movies, but this one's kind of near the bottom of the heap for me.
Well, okay. Well, how do we feel about spoilers? Are we ready, guys?
Sure.
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So spoilers are officially fair game. If you continue listening past this point, I am stalling with extra talk to give you time to jump off the feed or pause the show and check the show notes, take a look at the time index, and skip ahead. I was listening to a podcast recently where they're like, all right, we're going to go ahead and talk about spoilers. Here's the big reveal, blah. And like, I didn't even have time to like hit pause. Like, it was just there and I was spoiled. And you know what? It's okay. It's the last episode of Arrow this season, which I don't even feel like watching anyway. So who cares? But anyway, spoilers, officially fair game. Here we go. I want to talk about the Quicksilver scene, and not to say, oh my God, that was so amazing, Jim Croce, time in a bottle, Quicksilver. I actually instead want to say, did we have to have another one of these scenes? And if we did, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go finish your thought. Yeah.
And if we did we have to like try and outdo it by like 11 billion% and make it look completely like fucking rehashy stupid in the process?
See, that's the thing. Like, I wasn't as big about the first Quicksilver scene in Days of Future Past because it was this really neat scene. It was an interesting scene that had really nothing to do with the film. That was my problem with Days of Future Past. But it was super popular. Everyone loved the character. Everyone loved the scene. And so you kind of knew, like, the next time they put this character in a movie, they're just going to measure their dicks against their own. Like, they're going to try to outdo themselves. Sure enough, they do here. That scene, we're in spoilers now. The scene where the X-Mansion is exploding because it's an X-Men movie, and that's what happens. And Quicksilver spins in a fraction of a second, rescues like 40 damn kids from the explosion. I thought it was ridiculous, and not because it was, it didn't look cool. Yeah, it looked cool enough. It felt out of place for the world. It felt like they overpowered that particular character. And to the point where whenever we saw something from Quicksilver later on in the film, all I could think about was he could have gotten through that no problem, because he was moving so fast that he could stop and drink a tab in a millimeter of a second. Like, I had a problem with it. Like, it took me out of the movie so much.
It was
like, and I enjoy speedsters. I enjoy super speedsters. I love, Flash. I love Quicksilver as a character. I'm a comic book fan. You gotta love speedsters. But I thought this was stupid.
It was fan servicey. Totally fan servicey. It was the most talked about piece of the previous movie, so they had to do it again. It was as simple as that, and they had to try to do more of it because this one was about 3 or 4 times as long as that one was. But anyway, we got a comment here from our friend Felipe, who says he also enjoyed it, meaning the movie X-Men Apocalypse, more than Batman versus Superman. While the villain was on the poor side, I suppose I enjoyed it as much. No, he was surprised that he enjoyed it as much as he did. He was right there with you on X-Men, Will. So thanks Felipe, for weighing in on that. I was wondering how you enjoyed this one. I can't recall if you're a bigger X-Men fan or a bigger DC fan going in, or if that had anything to do with it. But we appreciate the comment for sure, and definitely want to hear your longer thoughts when we catch up to you sometime or on the Real Comics podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And the thing about the Quicksilver scene too, and I don't know if you guys thought this as well. There's a second scene towards the end of the movie where he got to do some speeding again. Like all the stuff is happening, and he's got a character with him, and he's running kind of. I guess actually it looked almost like a game of Mario because he was running left to right across the screen doing platforming. I actually thought that was way more effective. Because it was shorter, it was more abrupt. It wasn't this weird detour from the movie. It felt like it was that was the first time in these two movies where I felt that character was a part of the action as opposed to a diversion from the action, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Indeed it does. Well, we've got another live comment from Mick Jones, who says there were about 30 to 40 minutes of this movie that should have been edited out. Are you all yay or nay for Psylocke's purple unitard? So Mick actually brings up a point that I kind of wanted to address. So I think now's as good a time as any. I feel like this movie was probably 30 minutes too long. And I feel like a lot of it, I don't know, this movie tries to stuff in so much, right? We've got Cyclops coming to the school and starting his first day as a gifted youngster. We've got Jean Grey and the pseudo-emergence of the Phoenix Force now coming on scene and being a thing. We've got Storm, and she's new, and she's here, and so they're trying to pack in so much, and unfortunately, I just think it all suffers as a result. I think this movie could have done away with a few of the characters, maybe save them for a different movie. You could have just had the Scott Summers, Jean Grey, new generation of mutants, be its own movie, be its own thing, without trying to combine it with all this Xavier, Magneto. Wow. You know what I mean? I think it just sort of all is so top heavy that it crumbles. And Mick, you brought up Psylocke. Psylocke is one of my favorite characters from the comics. She's this total badass warrior chick with a plasma blade thing. I don't even know what you call it.
The Psy blade.
Yeah, her Psy blade. Thank you. I love Psylocke, and unfortunately, Olivia Munn gets a line and a half of dialogue and just lots of mugging at the camera while she slashes her lightsaber hand around. Because come on, that thing looked like a fucking pink lightsaber. It didn't look like a crackling energy plasma blade, Psy blade, whatever. I mean, there's this one point where she sticks it out and it's at someone's neck and it looks like a lightsaber. It's did Disney just dig into the rotoscoping vault from the Star Wars studio next door and just use that for the effect? I don't know, Marvel. I don't know. So I was really disappointed.
Well, that's wasn't Disney Marvel. This was Fox.
Oh, this was Fox.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true. I'm all sorts of wrong this podcast. So I appreciate you calling that out because they're definitely different things. But it's just unfortunate, I think, the way her character is sort of a non-entity here. And that unitard, so here's the other thing about your comment, Mick. We get to see Angel with his badass wings. We get to see Storm with her badass mohawk thing. We get to see Magneto looking svelte and awesome. And then we get Psylocke with her little unitard thing. Where's her upgraded ninja apocalypse power outfit thing? I don't know. It was pretty goofy, I thought.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the nay camp on Psylocke's outfit. I think that some of the outfits, you mentioned Angel, you mentioned Storm, they actually looked kind of cool in their costumes. Those were neat adaptations of their costumes. Psylocke looked like bad cosplay to me. Like, she did not look like she fit with the rest of the characters. Not only that, like, it's very easy to say as a comic book fan, well, that's what she wears in the comic books, and I get that. They actually took away some of the costume. They added extra boob windows to the actual comic book thing. So even that, like, even in the argument of like, well, it's true to the comics. Well, no, it's not. It's even more gratuitous in the comics, and needlessly. She was a wasted part of this film. You're absolutely right, Mick. There are 30 or 40 minutes of this movie that could have been edited out. Or for me, I would have been fine. Keep the runtime, you know? But instead, there's this diversion. I mentioned it in the pre-spoiler section, where they get taken to Weapon X and Wolverine shows up, and it's like a completely different movie inside of the movie. If that part of the film had been used to develop Scott and Jean and Kurt, and develop, you know, Storm and Psylocke, whose motivations we never really saw for why they joined Apocalypse. If we had used that time to develop those characters instead of having them just watch a 30-minute Wolverine movie, like, seriously, that's what they did. They just watched Wolverine kick ass and were like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, well, but the Wolverine himself was only 5 minutes, but there was the explosion. It starts with the explosion, Quicksilver doing his thing, the helicopters show up, them trying to figure out if they're being stealthy or not inside the helicopter, them sneaking around, then Wolverine. Like, that whole thing was a long section that had nothing to do with the plot. It was just this weird diversion so that we could shoehorn in Wolverine. And it did so at the disservice of the characters who I think could have been much more interesting if they had had more screen time.
And if they could have done it as quickly as apparently Magneto and Jean Grey can, like, put the mansion back together all perfect, it might have been fine. But it just took way too long. And I agree. I mean, it was a big step away. That said, I mean, I did enjoy seeing Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. But my question at this point, I mean, I know the continuity is all jacked, right? Because Days of Future Past did some kind of reset. And, like, things are different now, and, you know. So, but, like, in the first X-Men movie, like, Wolverine shows up, and, like, they know him. So, I guess, is this, like, establishing, like, him running into them? And that's where that comes from? I mean, I don't know. I'm really unclear now on how that works.
We'll find out in a couple more movies, I guess.
Yeah. This movie, for me, I was disappointed because I kind of liked the previous two movies that, I was kind of getting into the X-Men. It's like, oh, this is a universe that I can kind of get into and get behind. And then this movie comes along and it really let me down. Like, even the emotional core of the previous couple of movies, which was, Charles Xavier and Magneto, that relationship that they had been developing. And, this movie cemented it that it's always the same thing. That relationship is so stagnant that it's lost all its emotional power and poignancy, because Xavier says the exact same fucking things to Magneto in this movie that he said in the last couple of movies, which is, Eric, you don't have to do this, blah, blah, blah. There is another way. I mean, he says the exact same fucking thing, and it's really tired. It doesn't go anywhere. Never goes anywhere.
But at least this time they were all smiles and kittens and rainbows at the end. Like, seriously, I expected a fucking rainbow to show up behind the mansion as it was rebuilt. And then Magneto's like, we'll see, Charles. We'll see. I'm like, what the fuck? Seriously?
Rainbow.
I wanted
cerebro.
the next shot to be like, for it to say like 30 years later, and it cut to those those like videos of like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen just like hanging out and having just like the most fantastic time. I don't know if you guys have seen these on social media, but those two are great friends, and I want to be friends with them as well. But like, it's totally set up the Patrick Stewart Ian McKellen friendship, not the Charles Xavier Eric Lyncher rivalry. You're right, it is very stale. I think that. And this is part of why this movie confuses me so much. There was an extremely, to me, like kind of interesting, tender at times, scary at times, subplot with Magneto up front where he was like, I'm going to try to do a normal life and I'm raising this kid, and then things happen and now I'm going to turn back to my villainous ways. And I thought that was compelling, but then I take a step back and thought, well, do we need another Magneto origin story? Like, did we need for him to go in the course of this movie, after the last several times of him going like, I'm a good guy, I'm a bad guy, now I'm a good guy, now I'm a bad guy. In the course of this movie, he starts off a good guy who goes villainous and has a redemption at the end. That's an arc for one movie, but he's done that so many times. Like, it's hard for me to take that character seriously. It feels like the more and more they do it, it defangs him a little bit, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I like the Magneto character, and I kind of like the relationship between him and Quicksilver that they keep hinting at, but they never can get over the goal line and you know, make that more of an emotional beat. Instead, you know, apparently Magneto's been watching Flashdance and decides to become like an iron worker or something, and have a normal life. And guess what? As soon as he showed up in that scene with a wife and a young daughter that he's, you know, tucking into bed. Oh, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. I turned to Brad and I said, dead. And
God, yeah.
Sure enough, the next scene, not only did they kill them both, but they did it with one arrow, which was friggin' awesome.
Yeah, that was
like
pretty funny.
That's Hawkeye's origin story.
That's just lazy, sloppy story writing right there.
Oh yeah, they appeared on screen and you knew they were dead.
Right.
Oh, for sure. And unfortunately, we don't get any payoff of the whole Quicksilver being the son of Magneto thing. The least they could have done was when he like showed up and Magneto's in his like Magneto bubble, like where he was fucking moving rocks around all Earthbender style for 45 fucking minutes.
Floating in the air,
all
like Jesus.
You know, at least the thing that could have like broken him out of it was like having a new family member. Like that would have made sense. That would have like sort of justified maybe him turning away from Apocalypse. Because here's the thing, Apocalypse, right? He's supposed to be this like galvanizing villainous force. He's like gathered four of the most powerful mutants and he's bent them to his will and given them, you know, extra power and, you know, and all of a sudden they like turn against him. And it's like, why? Like, why? I don't understand why they're doing this.
Half of his four horsemen changed sides because it would be cool. Like, that's why. Like, you know, it's like, oh, it'd be more cool if Magneto and Storm were also blasting him in there at the end. But that was another problem for me. I thought, again, Storm was really, really cool. That actress was really great. But we start to see kind of a little bit of her motivations, like the thief on the street type stuff. But the reason. And we get why she first joins Apocalypse. Like, he's kind of like, oh, I want to make the world better. And she's like, yeah, I'm down for that. But as soon as he starts, like, just randomly murdering people, there's not a moment where she goes, oh, hey, that's not cool. That's not what I signed up for. Maybe I should think about bailing. She just kind of there at the end just swaps. Same with Magneto. Likewise, Psylocke. Apocalypse walks up to Psylocke and says, I'm going to make you powerful. She says, okay. And then that's it for her character development. At least the Angel, as far as the Four Horsemen concerned, at least Angel kind of made sense. This is a dude who had been forced to cage fight. His one power was having these wings and they were injured. So now he got something remade. And I understood that without having to have a whole lot of time. I felt like Angel had enough character development for the role that he played in the film. But man, like Storm and Psylocke were completely useless in this film. And that's a problem. That is a problem for an X-Men movie when you have Storm become a useless character.
Right. And I don't think the villain in this movie was useless, but it really is becoming a sore point with me to see pretty big name actors who have amazing capabilities as actors put behind a fucking blue face and asked to be the stoic, like I don't know, there's nothing in that character. It's just superpowers, you know, I will destroy the superpowers. And that's all that Oscar Isaac does in this whole fucking movie. And it's, to me, that's a big waste of talent. I just don't like to see. I mean, even Jennifer Lawrence, you know, a lot of people have said, oh, she's sleepwalking through this movie. Well, she doesn't have anything to do. There's no acting there. It's just showing up, doing her super thing, and then letting the next X-Men or X-person come along and do their thing. Michael Fassbender, I love that guy. I love to see him act, but again, they didn't give him anything to do. They hung him in the air for 40 minutes and made him move metal around. That's really bad.
And from a comics perspective, there's no excuse for like making Oscar Isaac so stoic. Apocalypse's thing, at least comic book wise, and we got to see that in the movie, but we didn't get to really see it in the movie. This is a guy who is all about like Darwinism at its furthest reach. You know, he believes that only the strong should survive, which is why mutants should survive, because they're the strongest. And he's very, very cocksure about this. He's very proud about this. This is a character who in the comic books has gotten his ass kicked and thought like, oh, maybe I'm not worthy, and has had doubts because of that. Who has turned on his own people because they showed weakness and showed, you know, and these are things that, you know, they sound kind of typically villain, but if you put a lot of them together, you could have made him come across as more interesting, more complex, and more menacing. And instead, it felt like he was Apocalypse light. Like, not only in appearance, the appearance I thought didn't translate well to screen, but just personality wise, like there was not enough there to distinguish him, to really make him, like they could have called this character Villain Man and not make it be Apocalypse, and I wouldn't have known, you know, for sure that it was him, because it just didn't feel right. It felt like it was missing something.
Yeah, I mean, my issues is with the actors that they choose. I don't know if they bring these actors in like Oscar Isaac to sell tickets to this movie. Do you think that people were drawn to this movie because of Oscar Isaac's name? Really? But I bet you the studio thinks so. Otherwise, why would they go after an Oscar? Why would they go after an Oscar Isaac when they could put any up and coming actor who might, you know, do just as good a job or better behind all that makeup and stuff in that role? It kind of astounds me.
Well, my thinking is that Fox is probably thinking they have to lend some kind of legitimacy to the villain and the role, because yes, it's a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
It's a lot of terrible fucking makeup. And it's kind of a crazy out there character. So they've got to do something to try and anchor that side of things, I feel. And bringing in someone like Oscar Isaac, I think on paper maybe accomplishes that. The problem is that you can't tell it's fucking Oscar Isaac. So, yeah. I mean, if you know that going in, great. But I literally heard one person coming out of the movie say Oscar Isaac was in this movie somewhere. Who did he play? Was he one of the X-Men?
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's why you cast him. You got to add some legitimacy to the villain. And I don't care when they cast someone big for these movies, either the hero role or the villain, even if they put makeup on him. What the problem is you have to give them material worth working with. A good example of this, you know, not necessarily a name, but like, you know, he was definitely made up, was like Bautista in in Guardians of the Galaxy as Drax. You know, this is a character who, you know, he was written extremely well. Like, you know, when Drax said a line, you knew that you were going to get something extremely blunt and extremely literal. It was something that actor, he was the right actor for that particular role. That character was written perfectly for that team and perfectly for that movie. So it all comes back to script and filmmaking. And so that's what I wanted to see here is, I don't care if it's Oscar Isaac. I think Oscar Isaac could have been a great Apocalypse, but he wasn't a great version of this Apocalypse, because I don't know who really could have been.
Yep, agreed. I don't know what else we could say.
Well, I thought you just said Bautista in drag, which made me really chuckle.
You know, that would be really interesting too. I'm sure that if I get on Tumblr and look long enough, I can find that. We do have a comment here from Sean W., who says, "Watching your podcast, I agree." Hey, Sean, thanks.
Hey, Sean, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sean, good to hear from you. So yeah, I don't know that we have much else to say about X-Men Apocalypse. How do we feel about moving on to some plugs? Are we good?
I think so, and I feel like we probably dumped on this movie quite a bit, especially Brad. I know you kind of liked this movie. I fell very much in the middle, and I think we did spend a lot of time dumping on it. This isn't a bad movie. It's not an awful movie. It's just well, Jim's nodding his head yes. I'm speaking for myself here, and maybe a little bit for Brad. It's not a bad movie. It's not an awful movie. It's just not a good movie, and I think in some ways that's just as disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, it's divisive, I guess. Maybe I liked it the most out of all three of us. I felt like it was fine. I just felt like it didn't really take many risks.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, maybe it's because I saw it, 2 weeks after seeing Civil War. Maybe that set my expectation a little bit too, which was set after seeing Batman v Superman a couple months or a month before that. So I don't know. I liked it.
The next one's going to be great.
All right. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I am interested to see what they do with the whole Phoenix Force thing. I kind of liked the tongue-in-cheek joke that Jean Grey makes about, when they're coming out of Return of the Jedi and they're like, Empire was still the best one. And they're all like, oh, well, you know how it goes. The third movie always sucks. Wink, wink, nod, nod. X-Men The Last Stand. So I feel like maybe we're getting a redo of this whole Phoenix Force thing. That's my favorite thing about all of X-Men lore, whatever, is the Phoenix Force. So, Sansa going crazy with Phoenix firepower. I'm on board. Sign me up. But let's make it a Jean Grey movie with a couple of other X-Men and not a 50-player X-Men team trying to tell this Phoenix story.
The team that gets featured right at the end of this movie, those 6 or 7 people in the danger room.
Uh-huh.
Let's make the movie just those people. That's all the cast that we need. I mean, obviously a villain or whoever, but if that's our next our Phoenix Force is just her and her closest 5 friends kind of and going through all of this, that's the movie that I want to see. And they've set this up with Days of Future Past basically rewriting the timeline. Here we are, we're in a place where we can wash that bad taste of X3 out of our mouths, maybe get a better Phoenix movie. The stinger at the end of the film kind of sets up who our next villain might be, so that's pretty exciting too.
Stinger. Totally ridiculous stinger. Had nothing to do with this movie, hardly at all.
I don't even remember the stinger.
They walk into the lab. They get
some blood.
That's right. That's
right. Put it in there. Closes Essex Laboratories.
Who's he supposed to be?
Yeah, we're in spoilers. That's the name of Mr. Sinister, who's probably, in terms of the most famous 3 villains of X-Men, it's usually Magneto, Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister. So,
yeah, didn't mean anything to non-comic fans, really.
No, it was pure setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for X-Men Apocalypse. Let's move on into some plugs. So I will go ahead and go. Actually, you know what? Yes. So I'll do it in plugs. So Will on MBP TV last week, which you and Jim were part of. Awesome having you guys on the show. We recapped Game of Thrones, Survivor, and Preacher. So if you guys have not listened to that show yet, it is available. It's out there. Check it out. But Will, I wanted to ask you a question. So my plug last week on MBP TV was Steven Universe, and I've been watching a lot more of it. I wanted to ask you, is Comic Book Storm the Garnet of Steven Universe?
Is Comic Book Storm the Garnet of Steven Universe? So Comic Book Storm, especially as she develops and grows over time, becomes very much a matronly, motherly character to a lot of the younger core of team, while also still being the person that in a pinch, she'll go kick your ass. Mm-hmm. So that perfect blend of best mom and also best fighter. Yes, Storm is 100% Garnet.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm glad we're in line. Jim, you're probably lost right now. Sorry.
A little bit.
But yeah, so awesome. I'm glad you feel the same. But yeah, guys, go check out the latest episode of MBP TV, available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, or on our website. Will, what have you got this week?
All right, I've got a documentary, and it's on Netflix, fairly new on Netflix as well. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, you should. It's called Welcome to Leith. That's spelled Leith. It's a short enough documentary, less than an hour and a half. You can fit it in. You can fit 2 of these into any superhero blockbuster. So this is a cool little documentary. It's about this this dude who goes to North Dakota. He's this famous white supremacist, super crazy, but he's got a plan. He goes to this little town in North Dakota called Leith, and he starts purchasing parts of the town and encouraging other white supremacists to move to the town so that they can take over the city council and kind of take over this town. It's remarkably fascinating, this documentary. It's one, terrifying to think about, like, you know, these white supremacists all just like invading this small town. It's also very interesting because the film follows a lot of issues of like, well, like, should we stop this guy, or how can we legally stop him? Because he's going through a lot of these things through legal means, even if there's a lot of intimidation and other things involved. Super interesting. I found myself riveted all the way through this documentary. I found myself sick at my stomach. Like, it's one of those where, like, the main guy is super fascinating, but also super repulsive. You don't want to look at him anymore, but you can't pull yourself away. They do a lot of interviews with the guy, you know, the guy, the white supremacist guy. So the filmmakers really did their due diligence here. Anyway, I strongly recommend this one if you're a fan of documentaries. It's called Welcome to Leith. It's on Netflix. Go watch it today.
Awesome. All right, Jim, how about you? Close us out.
Brad mentioned that we spent some time in northern Arizona in a cabin. So I had some time to watch a movie that I downloaded called The Family Fang. This one stars and is directed by Jason Bateman. It's also got Nicole Kidman in it, who we haven't seen a lot from. But I've got to tell you, this is a dramedy. I'll set up the movie first. It's about this. Obviously, it's about this family with the name Fang. And it's also got Christopher Walken in it. And it's about the relationship between this set of siblings played by Nicole Kidman and Jason Bateman, and their relationship to their parents, who were very eccentric and always put on these elaborate type performance art pieces involving their children when they were young. And this is the effect, this movie gets into the effect of the children that now grown up as adults dealing with some of the stuff that their parents did, you know, when they were younger, and then something dramatic happens halfway through the movie. But it's a really great movie. It's Jason Bateman's first directorial, you know, try, I guess. Everyone's great in this movie. I was shocked at how much I like Nicole Kidman, because she's an actress that I just really haven't clicked with much, but we haven't seen much about her. Just fantastic. If you get to see it, it's called The Family Fang, and it's available on iTunes right now for rental or purchase.
All right. Awesome. Well, very cool. Another fun show, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, those of you who are listening live. So Mick and Felipe and Sean, thank you for writing into the show. Glad to hear from you guys. And for those of you listening on digital tape delay, definitely we'd love to hear your thoughts on X-Men Apocalypse. So feel free to leave a note on our Facebook wall. You can find us on Facebook. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at MB Podcast. So give us a follow. Tell us what you think about the movie. This episode and previous episodes are available on moviebearspodcast.com, as well as on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. We'll have to figure out what we're doing next week. What's coming out next week?
Is it Warcraft or is it the week?
I think Warcraft. Is it Warcraft? I think it may be Warcraft.
It's Warcraft.
Yeah, I know that we've got we're pretty much blockbusters all the way through August.
Yeah, totally. So we'll figure it out, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.